Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that will not transmit a state of absolute happiness to you. Maybe a little happiness, though.
No, yeah, not absolute.
I'm Miranda Simmons. No one should ever promise anything absolute.
And I'm Mike Altman. That'd be a great, maybe it's been used before. That'd be a great nickname. Okay. Absolute Michael. We are two religious studies professors trying to understand.
Like Absolute Vodka?
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
Trying to understand all these cult documentaries that you can't stop binge watching, no matter how hard you try. If you want to support the show and help more people find us, you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Cult Favorite Pod. Be sure to subscribe to the show, leave us a rating and review. And real quick, these views in this episode are our own as experts. We're experts. Experts and researchers in religious studies.
Scholars.
They do not represent the University of Alabama.
We're talking today about Twisted Yoga, brand new, hot off the cinematic presses, yes. Apple TV.
Cute, quick.
I think this is our first Apple TV.
This is Apple TV. Yes, I want to talk about that.
Part of that's because I didn't have Apple TV until just now in order to watch this.
Yeah.
So I'm a new.
I did not have. I had Apple TV for Ted Lasso, but once they stopped making Ted Lasso, I got rid of it. Although I will say my favorite. And actually my partner's favorite, I guess, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely her favorite season of television.
Okay.
Bad Sisters.
Okay.
Is on Apple TV Plus.
Okay.
And it's phenomenal storytelling. Okay. One of the best, highly recommend.
I'll check that out. I've been avoiding Ted Lasso because of just it. He's so much in the ethers, like the pollen currently in the air. Just you can't avoid it. And I felt like I was receiving Ted Lasso through osmosis or something, like cultural osmosis. And so I just didn't.
You have no desire to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just haven't gotten there yet. Maybe I will eventually. So what did you know before?
Absolutely nothing
about Twisted Yoga.
This is all new. I mean, I know about Tantra and that stuff, but about this thing, nothing. And
Tantra is going to make its way into sexual abuse. So if you do not want to hear about that, take care. And we'll see you next time. I also knew nothing about this specific person or group. We've talked about yoga before. And so I'm interested to hear you say more from that front about this specific case study. But I also didn't know. One of the things I learned from this documentary is that the French National Police have a cult crimes division.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. We'll get into the European context, I think, is an interesting piece of this.
Everything I have to say today is all about classification. And I guess that's arguably what I'm always talking about anyway. But that's everything that I have to say.
That's everything.
And so
we can stop the episode right here.
Well, no, but this is one example of like as soon as you start to identify crimes in a very specific way as related to cults, that's really interesting to me.
Well, and also, we'll get into that because also it's about there's a language like the language that's used and how that translates from French in some cases or whatever into English and how we think about it's all. And anyways, I have the same thoughts about they don't say brainwashing, but they kind of say brainwashing at one point. So, okay, what gets covered in this documentary? It's about the movement for spiritual integration into the absolute, or Misa, also known as Natha. I don't remember Natha. I can't remember what all that stands for. But these are all a kind of international, mostly European movement group organized around a single guru of Gregorian Bivolaru. I'm going to stumble over that all episode. Who is drawing on the tantric yoga tradition in certain ways. We could talk about that more.
Yeah, because he's also doing it in a very specific moment in communist Romania. And when yoga was banned.
Yeah.
And so when it started, but we'll get there.
We will get there.
Okay.
So
I thought that part was really interesting.
Yes, too. That's the most interesting. And what doesn't get covered, we get a bit that you just talked about, but we don't get a lot on Bivolaru or where he gets ideas, how he became. This is my ongoing complaint about a lot of these documentaries.
You want an origin story.
Whence the villain? I want to know whence this person came from.
I thought that was covered with I guess maybe the closest, but maybe it's also because I'm not as, that doesn't seem as necessary to me, but he was like writing to people trying to access like porn from other countries. And so what we do get as a kind of beginning story for him is his like sex addiction,
right,
and his interest in finding and creating contexts to, access whatever he wants, sexually with whomever he wants, even if they're underage.
And that, I think that's to me the missing pieces. And they're relying on one. We'll get to that section. We're going to go through the 3 episodes, but I think what was missing for me was
how that translated
how we
to
get
yoga.
from that young man writing those letters to quickly he's hosting yoga classes underground in Romania. How does that like that's the and maybe we don't have that.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe it's not their fault. But I'm always intrigued, and maybe it's because I have like a little bit of a history of ideas bent to the way I think about things, but I'm always curious, like, well, where do you get that from? Because you didn't just come, like, how did you knowing what I know about the spread of Tantra, how does that reach a Romanian 20-year-old or however old he was?
That's none of that happens in a vacuum. Take us through it.
And so it's a lovely
3-episode arc, which you love.
arc. I love a 3. Honestly, 3 45-minute episodes here for it.
Sweet spot for Michael Altman.
Episode 1 is about basically It's basically like you have the recruitment. In episode 1, everyone talking about how they ended up in this group. You have the horrible abuses in episode 2. And then you have the kind of focus and this is a common narrative trope. Apparently that I'm noticing across these, like the Vow does this as well on Nexium, where you don't reveal the bad guy until the end, and then you go back in time to before the group started and kind of re-narrate the cult leader. That was scare quotes. I know this is an audio medium.
It's been a minute since I've watched it. I'm trying to remember when they don't talk about him early on?
They talk about him as the guru, but it's always the first 2 episodes. The first 2 episodes, he is narratively framed by the stories of victims. So he's this kind of thing that they encounter at the end of their journey, and then that leads to the abuse. But like, if I was writing the book of this, I would probably start with him at writing those letters in Romania and like what's going on in Romania.
You like a linear progression.
Well, I'm not saying
chronological.
I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just noticing this is the way that this is the narrative form that these tend to be taking. And I don't know, like, one of the things one of the things about this documentary, and I think it's worth watching because I think it's actually it's a very well made example of the genre. But as I was watching it, I just kept thinking about how much this is like Apple TV Plus has never had a cult documentary. This is their first entree. What? Yeah, this is their first entree into this kind of content. It is.
I can't believe it.
It is.
I'm gonna be looking now. I'm gonna go do some.
There isn't another. There's nothing else like that. They don't even have a lot of documentaries on there, because they were producing. Don't worry,
listeners. I will fact check him.
They were initially producing a lot of niche, dramatic and comedy content. Right? Like,
lots of prestige stuff.
Lots of basically the kind of stuff that used to be on AMC.
Right.
And then this is the first, there's some documentaries on there, I think. And they now have F1. So the F1 documentary that they do. I don't know if you know about this. I don't know
what that is.
There's a very, very successful F1's.
What is F1? Is that a race car thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Formula One. Well, I only know that because a friend of mine is very into it.
We all have a friend.
I wondered if that was
everyone who has our level of education and age has a friend who's really into F1.
We're 1 degree of separation.
There's always somebody. It might be the same person for you and me. But there's a reality show they put out at the end of every season that is like a behind the scenes of the whole racing season that became really popular on Netflix.
Okay.
Apple TV bought that.
Got it.
Anyways.
So this is their first time.
So I mean, someone could.
Good job for the first time. Yeah.
It has, and that's what I like about it. I liked about it, or found interesting about it, was this is very much Apple TV treatment of this genre, but it still holds to a lot of conventions.
Okay.
All right. So episode 1, all about love. We meet a bunch of former members: Ash, Ziggy, Paula, Andrea, Bonnie, Miranda. The main protagonist in the story of all 3 episodes is Ash. And what's interesting is none of these are Americans. They're, many of them are Australian or
Ashley's.
British, or some are in Denmark or Sweden. We eventually hear from Romanians. But we hear about how she gets drawn through some like very kind of basic yoga classes through her friend Ziggy, who she kind of describes, I'm paraphrasing, but kind of as a metaphysical hippie guy. And she eventually is invited to Costanesti, Romania, where there's a month-long yoga festival, and hears about this place called the Villa.
Right.
And that during the festival, she could be invited to the Villa where she could finally meet the guru. But to be invited, she has to write the guru a letter asking, and then send pictures of herself in a bikini.
We've heard about that before.
This is,
Even to work at a fast
I was about to
fashion
say,
shop.
even this is,
Sure.
there's,
Anyway.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's not that different from either the American Apparel story or the Brandy Melville story. Turns out the villa's not very villa-y. When I hear villa, I think of
Sure.
that's what they call the house on Love Island. This is not the Love Island
okay.
villa. It does not
Sure.
have a pool
Sure.
and neon
Crawling
decorations.
vines and champagne,
No, and fake,
right.
lots of fake plants.
Sure.
No, it's got a large wall. It's windowless and very few windows. And she's basically held captive there and told to take a vow, promising not to leave. They take her passport, all of this. And then we hear from a few different people about sort of what's going on in the villa. There are these Miss Shakti contests. There is
And Shakti is like the feminine energy in the.
Do we want to do the Tantra talk now? We can do the Tantra talk now.
I think that it would be useful for context, because like these people are getting into yoga, and there are lots of reasons that people get into yoga, but this brand of yoga has a pretty specific bent. And so I think maybe some context would be useful.
Yeah. So if there are any South Asianist experts listening, just bear with me.
Nutshell.
Y'all know me. I'm an American. But anyways, so Tantra is a kind of large, it's not a single thing. It is a kind of philosophical approach to humans,
right?
Spread to what makes a human being.
Yeah, because we tend to just associate it with sex and sex practice. And Ashley talks about that a little bit. I thought it was just this cool sex thing.
Yeah.
And that sounded fun, but it's actually much broader.
And you can find it in everything from sort of there's Hindu wings of it, there's Buddhist wings of it, sort of all sorts of South Asian traditions draw on this overarching philosophy. And it kind of comes down to an argument about what it takes to find liberation, right? And so in a lot of traditional South Asian traditions, there are certain things you're supposed to do to achieve good karma that will eventually lead you to liberation.
Right.
In Tantra says that a lot of those rules are based on kind of purity. This is pure and impure, and the impurity is what holds you back. And the tantric argument is actually, if God is if the divine, if Brahma is in everything, if it's all part of it, then there is no impure.
Right.
And so, in ancient South Asia, you have stories of people, meditating on dead bodies or drinking out of skulls or all these different ways to signal the impure, pure binary is false.
And that's about this kind of merger or connection or transmogrification, which they talk about a bit.
Right. And
if I meditate enough on the guru, who is just a dude, he becomes Shiva.
Right. And along with that is an emphasis. So to go to the Shakti is an energy that is gendered as feminine, but it's in everybody. And it exists kind of
Anthropomorphically?
Yeah, in your body. In the body, it's conceived to exist at the base of your spine.
Okay.
And you have the various chakras that go up your spine.
Yeah.
And what meditation and tantric practice is supposed to do is it's supposed to, and it's also often called kundalini. You also hear that phrase for it. It's supposed to raise
we've talked about that before too.
What?
That can also get into
yeah. That's supposed to rise up the chakras in your spine,
situation.
and then it's going to lead to, and when it reaches your mind, a kind of liberative moment, right? And often sexual practice is part of that. And so Tantra has often been been sort of held back or pushed away or tried to be excised from traditions by authorities. It's like, I know more about it in sort of Hindu history, like it was a challenge to the authority of Brahmin priests in many ways. And so it was often sort of repressed. And even it also appears in places a lot of people don't expect, like Ramakrishna, who was the guru for Vivekananda, who was like the first Hindu teacher. So if you're ever seen a Vedanta society, those all trace back to Vivekananda. Well, there was a book that came out a couple of decades ago now that pointed out all the Tantra that was in that sort of that Ramakrishna was doing on the side.
Okay.
And it really ticked off a lot of the Brahmin students who were doing the Vedanta thing. Like, why? Like, no, that's not what's actually happening. So it's like, it's always been this kind of
contested.
It's often considered the left-handed path is how it's talked about. And it also has an influence in the United States and in Europe on a lot of the kind of, we might think of as like metaphysical or new age movements through people like Aleister Crowley.
Right.
And a lot of the kind of sex magic occult wing draws on Tantra.
Right.
Hugh Urban, if you're who's at Ohio State, is probably his stuff.
Written about this,
he's written a bunch about this.
So it's a contested and pretty fraught apparatus for how to explore energy.
And we did Wild Wild Country very, very early on in this journey. And there's tantric influences on Osho in the background of that too. So anyways, that's Tantra. It's way more complicated than the way it gets, even in this documentary, rendered as like sex rituals.
Well, and the Miss Shakti, but that's how they're staged.
Right.
And so the Miss Shakti, competition,
which is it's like a bikini contest.
100%. It's like it's a beauty contest, but it's also about like manifesting and exploring your Shakti energy, and the person who inhabits that the fullest is ostensibly the person who then gets announced as Miss Shakti. But it's also about being in a micro bikini. Yeah. So anyway, episode 2. So there's some shady stuff going on as far as Ashley. Like Ash's spidey senses start going off. She's joined this yoga practice. She's really into it. She gets invited to a villa, but now there's some like rituals and things happening that she's like, and her spidey senses start going off.
And we also meet in this episode at the end, and then we'll go to episode 2. But the last piece, we meet our French police force.
Yes.
How do you say this? Caimades? I don't know how to. I'm not. How do you call it? What do you call the name of these people of this group?
I think it's the Caimades.
Caimades? Okay.
I don't know.
But this is the French police force that investigates cult crimes, and we hear about this interesting phrase, "imprese mentale." Which is like,
we're so sorry.
I am so bad at French. I apologize. I did pass one French exam in grad school at one point, but that was just reading. But they talk about the exploitation of vulnerable people, in which they include psychological states. Like when I hear vulnerable people mentioned, it's often in sort of like, children and vulnerable people. It's often people with some sort of mental disability or age.
Right.
But they're talking about kind of someone who's having some sort of psychological state that could be more temporary, seems to qualify. So there's an interesting kind of legal situation here, where they're not, again, this is what I said, they don't say brainwashing, but it sounds like brainwashing kind of. So the episode 2, titled The Initiation, this is all about the abuses that went on in Misa and its network of schools. Ash gets invited to Paris to finally meet the guru. Everyone is told that the guru is in hiding because of the persecution by the Romanian authorities.
Right.
So if you Google, someone even says that like Gregor I keep tripping over his name. Keep saying that Bivoluru is a household name in Romania at this time. And that's because he had already been prosecuted once, but got off, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But they tell everyone like, oh, if you Google him and find all this bad stuff, it's because the Romanians government is out to get him. So just ignore those stories. That's just persecution. And we hear about this initiation ritual where students, like you were saying, transfigure the guru into a god of Shiva through ritual sex. And of course, the inverse of this, or converse, is that the initiate becomes the Shakti, the feminine god, goddess. And so there's it's a mutual transfiguration. We also find out about this sort of network of houses run by Romanian women that have sort of tantric rituals in the morning and then are doing cam shows online in the afternoons and evening. And it's the funding from those campsites that funds everything.
Right.
And that's when you start to realize what's sort of actually like going on here.
Under the auspices of manifesting and expanding the energy that you have, like putting it out into the world.
Right.
So these dudes sign on, mostly dudes, I suppose, sign on for sex and like cyber sex or a show, but that's your opportunity to help them explore this more divine.
You're building up your Shakti energy through the rituals in the morning, initiation rituals in the morning, and then sort of sharing that through a campsite in the afternoon. There is an interesting moment in this episode where Andrea, who I find the most fascinating of all of the former members.
Is she the one from Sweden? She looks. Yes. She's like if Ingrid Bergman, if Isabella Rossellini were a yogini, that's what she looks like. I mean, it was great.
She's a piece of work. Like she's got a whole
love her.
But she stands out because she says after her initiation ritual, she felt complete.
Well, because for her, and I appreciated her perspective because she was able to identify her own consent.
Yeah.
That like, this is a thing I was into. This is a thing that I wanted. This is a thing that worked for me. Also, oh my God, like this is something that was happening without consent. Well, then he's a monster. It's like both, she's able to hold both truths, you know, that like, and the only thing that was not great for her was that, of course, when she got pregnant, like living her own life, that was something that wasn't really appreciated inside of the group because, you know, but.
So we go back to Ash's story for the end of this episode. She decides not to go through with the initiation ritual with the guru, says she wants to leave. They make her write and then read aloud on camera a statement basically exonerating Misa from any wrongdoing. She gets out. She talks to Ziggy, tells him what had happened, and he starts wondering if he should leave. And we end up being told with this idea that, Bivoluru was a household name in Romania. Because to this point, he's very mysterious in the stories of the that we're getting.
Right.
So then episode 3,
we get his context.
The big reveal, the guru. And we meet Uma Dinsmore-Tuli, a British author of the book Yoni Shakti, which is she's an interesting character as well. She's trying to like reclaim yoga and tantric practice for women and somehow extricate it from the history of abuses within. Right. This is not the only,
like as a mode of empowerment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sort of taking it back from a number of abusive movements that have claimed to draw on Tantra.
Sure.
Ash, we also hear from Ziggy after Ash had talked to him about her experience, and he makes a Jonestown comparison.
Yeah.
Uma connects with Ashley, and reprints a lot of Ashley's accounts in her book. And we get a lot from Uma about, she does a lot, as I put in my notes, she does a lot of authenticity work about what is real Tantra and what is not real Tantra.
Sure.
And talks about the good teachings that are twisted for harm and abuse.
Sure.
Then we get the part we were talking about earlier, where we get a walk through Bivolaru's biography from Andrea Bocatia, a Romanian journalist. And we hear about his history of mental illness and sexual obsession. We also meet Hugues Gascon, a French cult investigator, which I feel like is a hobby. I don't feel like he's getting paid for his cult investigating, but he's
I'm just laughing at pronunciation again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well,
yes. Go.
You know, and then we get this back and forth narrative for the majority of this episode between 1990s, 2000s Romania and 2010s and 2020s, like Europe more broadly. And in that earlier 90s and 2000s, we meet Agnes, who grew up, her mother was in the movement in Romania.
Right.
We hear about under communism in Romania, yoga was repressed. Bivolaru was arrested for teaching yoga. After the fall of communism, people are looking for spirituality.
Sure.
Agnes gets initiated at 15 and a half in her ritual, her sex ritual with the guru.
With AKA raped.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, but that's part of the point, though, is that like, someone's initiation is someone else's rape. Like I think that so much of this, which I know we're going to get to in a second, is to do with how people identify experience and gain language about it. And I found that a really powerful thing to think about.
No, there's a moment, I don't remember which episode it's in, where someone is saying like, they started naming what was happening, and then they realized,
yeah, right.
Oh, that was this was the abuse.
Yeah. Anyway.
So the Romanian authorities investigate. They raid. We have these videos of the Romanian like sort of raiding these houses that were spread throughout. Bivolaru goes on a TV talk show, and that's where he tries to promises to give everyone absolute happiness. Transmit absolute happiness to the TV show.
Right. And then he kind of just closes his eyes and like kind of, I don't know, gesticulates in a certain kind of way facially. And the cops are kind of laughing at him.
Yeah.
Right.
And then he flees to Sweden. And this is the interesting moment where Sweden won't extradite him back to Romania because of the history of abuse and corruption in Romania.
Sure.
And so they're like, we feel like this is religious persecution.
Sure.
We're not going to send you back there.
Sure. It can be two things.
So, yeah.
You know what I mean? There's probably religious persecution and
so
this dude needs extra. Anyway.
That's sort of that 2000 story. The 2010s, 2020 story, which is the one involving most of the people we hear from in the film. France will prosecute cult crimes.
Sure.
And so there's this interesting difference between kind of France as this bastion of Western rationalism and Romania that can't get its shit together to prosecute this guy and he escapes. Ash goes public with her story. It finds Gascon. Gascon connects her to the French police. And then in 2023, Bolivaru is arrested and charged with rape, human trafficking, and kidnapping. There's other investigations and charges throughout Europe. There's ongoing cases in Germany and I believe Denmark. It's on the Wikipedia page.
But since that was just 2023, these things are still
nothing
up in the air and ongoing.
Nothing has come of even the French case, which was the first.
Yeah.
And we get an interesting kind of, I think Andrea gets kind of one of the last words, and she says a lot, but I think one of the things she says is, her kind of takeaway is we can't keep our gaze up to the light when we're standing in a pile of shit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So
that's it. What do you want to talk about?
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought that there was, I kept getting struck by an emphasis on what people are calling things. So Bivolaru he's on the French police's radar since 2016. But part of their work is trying to figure out how to classify his offenses. And so the police officer that we hear from, the detective, is saying like, is it organized crime? Is it kidnapping? Is it human trafficking? Or is it a cult crime? Like cult crime becomes a classification that is set apart from these other offenses, which I found really interesting. The emprise mentale, the psychological control that you're talking about as a way of identifying cult crimes over and against these other modes of illegality. The example of transfiguration, I think, is another interesting way where classification comes up and announces itself in this very powerful way, because you are, again, like looking at a person, but the shape of their body will change, you know? Bivalaru becomes Shiva. Like, and so part of that work, part of that ritual, a huge part, is that the identification of a thing becomes a different thing. And that is this transfiguration that is kind of the whole point, is the thing that is a conduit that gives you access to commune with the divine. Yeah. That happens by way of classification. The fact that Bivalaru was sent to a psychiatric unit and not a jail as a young man, like that was a moment where I thought it was interesting. Like, again, like what we call things and thus where we place them and what our relationship is to them is just everywhere. So even in his own criminality, because he's a sex addict. And so he's placed in the psychiatric ward, not jail. And then that's also why during the fall of communism, then they like release a bunch of people because
that's why he gets out. Yeah.
Miranda talks about, she says, once I'd taken what happened out of the context of their dogma. So I had this experience, but it's in this container, it's in this context. And in that space, it makes sense. It makes sense as a ritual or some transmogrification, or again, communing with the divine or whatever. Once you take it, excuse me, once you take it out of the context of that dogma and put it in a different container, then I understood what happened was trafficking and rape. Yeah. And I thought that was like, yes, indeed. Yeah. For sure. This is, as ever, I'm forever invoking Mary Douglas, the British anthropologist who I know that we've talked about before here, but who says, in her studies of purification rituals and ideas about the taboo, she defines dirt as matter out of place. That the difference between dirt and soil is not a substantive difference, it's a contextual one. And so too here, like, how can trafficking ever not be trafficking? Well, what container is it in? And if it's in the container of this dogma, well, then we can call it a purification ritual or whatever. Right. And
it was an invitation. That was the language.
It's an invitation.
Yeah.
And but put it in this other context, and it's trafficking, which is not to say that like one person's initiation is another person's trafficking. And so it's all the same. It's not to justify or dismiss the very real harms of trafficking. It is to say how powerful the work of classification is, such that it can make something so damaging and something so harmful makes sense in a specific context. So that was a big one. Paula is another person whose story we hear from, and she talks about the power of putting language to her own experiences and events. She feels uncomfortable at first when a therapist talks to her about being kidnapped, because she just wants to say like, wait, hold up. What? Yeah. Because you think about kidnapping as like, we put it in the container of, I don't know, getting blindfolded and like thrown into the back of a van or something. Yeah. And for her, that's
Give me back my daughter. Yeah. Like that whole.
This is not what happened to her. And so I'm not kidnapped, But then in the context of talk therapy, like she starts being explained, like here is, so what I understand is this is what happened to you. And that we call that kidnapping a lot of the time. And so then she starts to find that helpful. Like any sex through manipulation or coercion under French law, which is another important qualifier, another important prepositional phrase. Under French law, any sex through manipulation or coercion is rape. And so then of course it's about, so then now we have to classify manipulation and coercion. Like how do we prove that? How do we demonstrate that someone was manipulated, blah, blah, blah. And you brought this up, kind of like obliquely, but the problem with the Tara Yoga Center, because it has all these different names. It's Natha, it's Tara, it's like in different sites, this same school under the same guru is going to have these different incarnations. And so we hear in the kind of narrative disclaimers and qualifiers at the end of each episode, this the Danish center for Natha, whatever, absolutely like removes itself from, like, there's all this distance that's trying to be placed from
the black screen, white text disclaimers that all these have. Yeah.
And maybe that's legit. It's hard to parse where all of that starts and stops and where his direct influence, Bivarlaru's direct influence is, because there are all these different names, there are all these different classifications. And so one of the former members whose story we hear talks about like how triggering it is for her to drive past the Tara Yoga Center. But part of the reason it's problematic for her is that just no one would know that it's connected to Misa, to Natha, to all of these things that...
That's another thing I wish had been in the documentary, would have been like a 5-minute, maybe in episode 2, a 5-minute...
Like an org chart?
Like, because, okay, what does it mean to be a yoga teacher at like the Tara Center? Like what do they know? Are they being kept out of this initiation practice and all of this because, well, we need some people just to teach yoga to bring the people in that we're going to, there, like, there's all these organizational questions I have, which sounds like a weird thing, but like, I do think it tells us something about like how this works and people's experience to think about what, I had the same question even about like the Jonestown documentary, because they talk about the security and I'm like, what does it mean to be Jim Jones' security guard?
Do you know what you're protecting?
What do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
I had the same question. I would have been nice to see that.
But I mean, like, that I think is one of the reasons that Andrea's story is important, because again, like she had a great experience. She communed with the divine, and then, she kind of stepped back because she had a baby. And so, like, I think that there are a lot of people, probably, I assume, whose stories are pretty similar, even if they never meet the guru, even if they never meet Bivarlaru. One of the things that I was struck by was, Ashley says early on, when the producer is trying to ask her, the interviewer is trying to ask her about her relationship to her own story, her relationship to the experiences, where does consent start and stop for you, whatever. And she says, I wanted to want to, And I think that really, I don't know, it's connected for me in a pretty important way to these questions of classification and the emphasis on what we're calling different things, because I guess it's a moment that identifies the nuance and the slipperiness, that there's not just an object here. I have desire. This is external to me, whatever. It's not always that our relationship to our experiences are these kinds of tidy bento boxes of happenstance. It's or coercion or
Right.
whatever. But there is often this like, well, I wanted to want to. And so what is that? What do we classify that as?
Yeah.
You know, it's still desire operating, but there's also these like something isn't right feelings and. So it isn't to, again, it's not to say that then we should figure out what to call that. I just think it's a nice moment that sheds light on that difficulty.
Yeah. And it changes the way you interpret the details. So like, and Andrea didn't talk about this, so I don't know how she thinks about these things, but if you think that this is an actual ritual that gives you communion with the divine powers of our universe, then of course it's kept secret. Like, of course it's, you know, you have to, you know, make all these promises because we're dealing with powerful things, right? And so the same stuff that Ashley's experience reads as red flags that this, you know, and I want to someone who is seeking that, like Andrea was, it feels like exactly what you like. Yes, of course it would. If it was easy, everyone would do it and it wouldn't be important or special. Sure. So it's really, I think so what I was intrigued by was thinking about like, what is new in this documentary, not in terms of the story, but in terms of like other documentaries that because it was very easy for me to put this alongside, you know, the
vow you mentioned
was hugely, and I was actually curious because these are all like the Nexium stuff and this are happening at the same time. And they're very similar in the way that they function, the way that Biravolu and what's his
Keith Raniere.
Raniere. I knew I was like Raniere. They're using similar kind of organizational strategies.
Yeah.
But they're completely siloed from each other. Cause I was like, is there any connection or influence or whatever?
But that's the thing. I think that like there's a connection if we identify something called cult and think that specific things go there. But like men harming people for their own sexual pleasure,
yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's happening every day all over the world.
Sure. But I think to me, it's more
connected by like, you know, systems of patriarchy and harm. But anyway.
I think it's, yes. I think it's more though, like,
but I hear you.
There's something about
the structuring,
the way you, and the creation of a kind of mystique around a guru, the invitation to come, this secret thing, all of that kind of stuff. And I think like, but in terms of this documentary, I think Andrea's that we've been talking about stands out as very different than anyone else we've encountered in documentaries that have a very similar structure otherwise. So to me, that was a kind of interesting moment. And then I think the big thing, like the European, so much of what we've been looking at has been in the US, and so much of it is possible because of the particular discourse of religious freedom that the United States has, where, you know, the FBI is hesitant to get involved in religious matters or religious organizations. Even after Jonestown, like with the ATF with the Branch Davidians in Waco, there was like we can't do anything because it's a church until we can, and then we don't really know how to deal with the apocalyptic theology, and so we run in there with a tank. So the European context, right? I mean, in France at this time, this is also like a period when they're prosecuting Bibeloru is also a period of high Islamophobia in France.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like the burkini ban, things like the burqa ban, there's all of this in the very French laïcité, secularism means no religious imagery in public, except for Catholic stuff, because that's culture. That's not religion. Sure. That's the argument, right?
Right.
And so there's something about just the general French approach to religious freedom that makes it really easy to prosecute
cult crimes.
So-called cult crimes.
Yeah.
Right. In a way that like you could not have a cult. The FBI could never, I think, have a cult crime division.
That's an interesting thought experiment.
So that was interesting to me.
For sure.
And because there's other places. I remember I was talking to a colleague from Europe when he had first gotten here, and we were talking about religious organizations in town around here, and he's like, "Is there a registry of all of the churches?" Because that's not uncommon in France or in European countries more broadly. And I was like, "No, I don't even know how." It's like, what does it take to become a church? It's like a building. I mean, if you don't want to pay taxes, eventually you have to put in a form with the IRS to get your status. But it's like that's the closest thing we have, and even that is not nearly as strict or stringently governed as what happens in European countries. So I think
it's interesting.
It's not marked that way, but to have this that's definitely for a United States audience, a U.S. audience. Australia also has a similar anti-cult laws. And a lot of anti-cult investigations.
Interesting.
I've noticed, which a lot of these people coming out of Australia.
Not born out of all of the Hillsong scandal, though, importantly.
No, well, I don't know that they're unrelated.
Tossing
I don't know.
That out there. I don't know.
I'd have to go back and look.
What's your takeaway?
I mean, I feel like this is a sign that so I remember when we watched, which one was it? The Andrea Yates documentary. And the guy in that documentary talked about, we never had an episode 2 because it was an isolated individual, kind of like they're getting stuff through the mail situation.
Yeah.
And that I marked that in my head as like, there's enough of
now
these.
You're looking for episode 2.
Well, it's enough of a thing that there's now a meta conversation within the document about what this thing is, right? And I feel like this is another piece of that kind of puzzle of, and this is where I'm like, now I'm getting curious about, because these are not all made by the same people. So I'm curious about the production and who these people are talking to and how these get made, because this one follows the same kind of trajectory of the 3 kind of part episode, the way it's revealed, the way the story is told. It's not that different from a Shiny Happy People season. It's not that different from the HBO Yoga Fire. It's all, and so but it was like not only that, but it was taking those conventions and then giving them the demographic millennial twist that is Apple TV Plus, and so in that way, it kind of, by giving it that twist, it actually kind of galvanizes the genre even more, because now we have this version of it. So I think it's interesting. I don't have a takeaway other than to say I was thinking at one point that this was going to run its course and that we would see a move away from these, but now they're showing up on new platforms and they're showing up with new stylized differently, but the same structures and the same classification issues and the same arguments. So that to me is really interesting as a kind of media studies question, or kind of religion and media studies question about what is happening to the discourses about things we call cults or things we call religion, and how are these now pretty popular? Like, we don't know exactly. I don't know how popular this is, because Apple TV has far fewer subscribers than a Netflix or an HBO Max, but they're getting a lot of views.
Yeah, and it's I wonder what we think the function is. Again, like mine is always my hunch anyway, my speculative diagnostic analysis is that it's a way of alleviating anxiety. But the true crime genre and cult documentaries seem very different from, like, if we would say, like, I can imagine somebody saying, well, this is a way to hold people to account. And maybe that's true. Like, it popularizes a story that we would otherwise perhaps not hear. and it gives us maybe that awareness then translates into some kind of collective action. But it's very different from the kind of direct purpose that a show like Unsolved Mysteries had,
right?
Where it was like, this is the information that we've got. This is what they're looking for. These are the holes in the case. If you have any information, call this number.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
there was a very, not interactive, but there was a kind of, I am talking to you, viewer.
Yeah.
So that if you happen to know anything, you can maybe help us with this. And so that is not part of the engagement here. It's not to do with, but again, maybe people take that on themselves in a different way now that wasn't true with, I don't know. There are probably lots of different dynamics that are at work in this.
I think that there's like so many questions to be answered about the reception of these documentaries. I recently learned that every 6 months Netflix puts out an engagement report where you can look up information about like the number of views and watching hours for all of their stuff. And so there's a part of me that wants to start digging into that. Yeah,
you should look at it. I wonder if also too, because as we've discussed, these are they tend to go under the rubric of cult documentaries tend to get classified as true crime. Yeah. There isn't really a section of cult. I mean, you can Google it and stuff comes up, but that said, I wonder if the demographic for true crime, I wonder if it's predominantly middle-aged white ladies who are also watching these cult documentaries, or if the demographic changes a little bit with this other label. Yeah. Yeah. That would be interesting for me to learn.
Do know. So like what's interesting, because there's other episodes, others of some of these that we've watched have been spin-offs of like Discovery Channel shows. So they've aired on.
There's a new one about the
12 tribes.
Yep, and I
sent that to you as well. Yes,
that's a People magazine.
But I think it airs on Discovery, right? So there's some of these that air on cable, right? But then are also streamed on these streaming services. There are others that are only. There's a new. It's not out yet. It might be out by the time you hear this. There's a new documentary called False Prophet coming out on Netflix. That'll be about the guy. I think it's about the guy who took over after what's his name? Jeffs, the FLDS. Warren Jeffs. After Warren Jeffs was arrested, the new guy who kind of took over.
Samuel Bateman, a polygamous cult leader who self-proclaimed himself as an heir to Warren Jeffs.
So we've had a whole series. There's 7 or 8 Warren Jeffs related documentaries, and now we've got the one about the guy that came after him.
This is the little AI, like nutshell. Directed by Rachel Dretzen, follows cult expert Christine Marie and her husband, who secretly infiltrate Bateman's sect, gathering evidence of his. So that one you actually like hang out with a cult expert. Would be exhausting and interesting to watch. Interesting and exhausting to watch. Or maybe like really empowering. I don't know. It's how that. Anyway, whatever. You've heard my soapbox. We don't need to go on that soapbox. We're out of time.
Yeah. What's your? So, anyways, I think that there's more to look at it when I talk about these conventions of these docs, and there's a lot on that side that I'm curious about.
Yeah.
What's your take?
I just was stifling a sneeze. I'm in like allergy brain, but I do think that what you said about Andrea, the quote about like can't keep our gaze up to the light when we're standing in a pile of shit. I liked that. I noted that too. I wrote it down and that I put it in my takeaway slot here. But it's interesting to me on several different levels because, on one hand, 10,000%, because that's what I'm always trying to look at with these things is like, well, so what is the context that makes this phenomenon possible? What is the superstructure in which this phenomenon is contained? And a lot of times it's a pile of shit. It's multiple piles of shit. It's it's a mountain. It's a mountain. With separate piles. And then that also makes me think that, maybe we shouldn't keep our gaze up to the light when we're standing in a pile of shit. But I think so often that's absolutely what we're doing all the time. So I don't know. I guess it's not a counterpoint to her claim. It's just I thought an opportunity to think about how we are always standing in something and trying to look at something else. That is in so many respects, just called Tuesday.
Yeah. She has another line. I think one of the producers asks her, or director asks her about how do you make sense of all of these things he's done, the group, and she says, well, I know, and every light has a point of darkness in it, and every darkness has a point of light in it. But I don't think I realized how big the darkness was, or something.
Yeah, his was a lot. She takes the tantric things seriously, all of the things that you explained about. The divinity in all things, oneness, where the physical boundaries of ourselves in the sensory world are illusions, those are illusory. I think she takes that really seriously. And so if that is your worldview, then it makes total sense to nuance this dude too, who is at one and the same time just a guy. Whatever, also called guru, also called monster. I liked her perspective because I think that it gives voice to that. He's probably all those things, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you have a cult favorite?
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a specific one right now. I was a little uncreative about. I don't know. I've been revisiting Paul Simon's Hearts and Bones record lately.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got. Yeah. Yeah. Have I already given Wild Up's recording of Julius Eastman's Feminine? I don't know if I've given that one yet, but that one, oh my God, that I was able to bear such joyous witness to a live performance of Julius Eastman, who's a minimalist composer in New York in the 60s and 70s. And Wild Up is this group, mostly out of, I think they're based in LA. But they have people perform with them from all over. Anyway, they did a performance of it, and it was gorgeous. And oh my God, tears to my human eyes.
You can actually they have the recording of it.
Yes.
On Bandcamp, and
it's on Spotify. There's
some YouTube stuff too.
You can. It's a journey. Like so much minimalist composition is. It's something that you hang in with, and it takes you into different places. And it's I love Julius Eastman's work so much, and I am borderline obsessed, and their performance is truly, truly spectacular. But, also give a listen back to, go take a walk with Renee and Georgette Magritte and their dog after the war. Paul Simon will take us there.
As is often the case, my cult favorite will reveal the massive gap in our taste.
You don't want to talk about New York avant-garde? What?
Okay, so I just finished. It's a very short season. It's only 8 or 9 episodes of a new dating reality show on Hulu called Love Overboard.
Oh, great.
It is what I love.
Do they walk the plank?
Yes. No, they literally, there is a moment in every episode.
I'm against it.
Where one person has to choose between two people.
I mean.
And they say who they want to stay with, and they're both on a plank, and the bottom jumps and they drop in.
Very dramatic.
Amazing.
Okay.
So the whole premise of, so a couple things. The show is hosted by Gabby Wendy.
Okay.
Former Bachelorette, who then came out as lesbian afterwards and was on Traders and has an amazing podcast that is very funny. And she, what I love about the show is you have someone who is sort of openly queer on a very straight heteronormative dating show who uses that as a way to constantly poke fun at the straight people on the show in a way that I found
on a pirate ship.
It's a yacht. They're on a yacht. And the other premise of the show is
it's still sort of campy, I guess.
4 couples get to live on the top deck where it's nice, like you would expect in a Love Island situation. Everyone else has to go work below deck.
Man.
And they have to do now. How much
do we not have so many social experiments that we're already living through on a daily that we need to invent and manufacture these social experiments?
So the only way to get to the top deck is to be in a couple. So there's an entire, like, the game mechanics are built like as an actual competition game. The mechanics are such that you never, like, it's sort of built for maximum drama, because if I want to get up to the nice deck, I have to convince somebody up there I'm into them so they'll bring me up. But then I don't actually have to be into them.
That sounds so exhausting to me. Do we have time so I can tell like one little story?
Anyways.
Will you edit some things out so that I can tell a little story about? You can edit this out too. You can edit this out. But on my walking the plank made me think of my own associative like moment for that is in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Of course.
A little moment on the holodeck when, and I've used this in class before to talk about classification. So this is why I'm bringing it up. This is my attempt at like making little connective tissue, you know, like connecting little strands. So Data, the android who just wants to learn how to be a human, and the rest of the crew are on this pirate ship. And at one point, Worf, the Klingon, is like on the plank, and someone, I think Riker, says like computer remove plank or whatever, and he falls into the ocean and everybody laughs. And Data is confused about this moment, like so many moments in human behavior, because it doesn't make sense. And he's like, why are people laughing? The Dr. Beverly Crusher says, well, it's all in good fun and you have to be spontaneous and in the moment and, you know, just be in the moment. Got it? And he's like, got it. And then pushes her overboard. And she falls into the water and is pissed.
Yeah.
And everybody looks just stunned at Data. And he's like, wasn't that, but that was, Geordi's like, not funny. And I love it because it's like, when does a joke work and when does it not? It's never about the actual punchline. It's always about the context. And, you know, it's a nice little moment to teach that kind of Mary Douglas point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's also a joke. Anyways, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about
Love Overboard.
Have you heard?
Ugh.
I'm telling you, it's wildly entertaining. It was. Anyways, thanks for listening to Cult Favorite. Please subscribe to the podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating and a review. We'd love more ratings and reviews. Follow us.
You're rounding up to we.
Instagram and TikTok. I'm always rounding up to we in most situations. Special thanks to the Digital Lab and the Department of Religious Studies and the University of Alabama for production assistance. All right, we will see y'all in a couple weeks.
Next time.